Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has approved a plan for a full reoccupation of the Gaza Strip, aiming to force Hamas to release Israeli hostages and eliminate the terror group's remaining strongholds. The report first surfaced via my former colleague Joel Pollack at Breitbart News, which detailed Netanyahu's decision following the collapse of ceasefire talks. 19 former Israeli security chiefs are urging Netanyahu to reconsider, warning that a full reoccupation risks international condemnation, long-term entanglement, and greater danger to the hostages, some of whom may be executed if Hamas is pushed too far. Hostage families have echoed that fear, citing prior incidents where Hamas killed captives when Israeli ground forces advanced. The Israeli Security Cabinet is expected to formalize the decision this week, as reported by Reuters. Joining us now is my longtime friend, Evan Sayet, commentator, speaker, and author of The Kindergarten of Eden and The Woke Supremacy. He brings a sharp eye to the cultural and ideological fractures shaping this conflict. Evan, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Christian. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you. Israelis' move to fully reoccupy Gaza has drawn sharp pushback from both the usual suspects and increasingly from voices on the populist right. Why do you think we're seeing this shift, and what do you think it really signals?
Let me take that in two parts, because one, look, it's not surprising. It's a difficult choice in a difficult war where there are very few choices left. If it were an easy choice, Netanyahu would have made it on day one. The reality is that the reality on the ground is such, when you see pictures of your hostages being starved to death, when you see pictures of, your citizens digging their own graves, suddenly the calculus of I'm not going to go in and try to rescue them because they might get hurt, they might get killed, that's sort of taken off the table. And so I'm not surprised that there's a pushback from within the Israeli government, from within the Israeli society. Look, it's a fractious society. It's a fractious government by design. I don't take that as an indictment of Netanyahu. I take that as an endorsement of an Israeli government and an Israeli electoral system that is parliamentarian and has these kinds of open disagreements and debates. As far as the populists in America, for the sake of clarity, I'm going to take exception to your choice of words, because it's not the populist. Populist is too big a word. It's an umbrella to describe this entire movement that is really more against the control by the elite than it is for any particular policies once power has been wrested back to the people. The Christian nationalists don't necessarily agree on policy with the libertarians, who don't necessarily agree on policy with the moderates, who don't necessarily agree, certainly, with the Democrats who have taken our side in order to defeat wokeism. So there is a fraction of the populist movement, and it's not surprising because it is the Christian nationalist movement. And once you insert a modifier before the word nationalist, you're no longer a nationalist. There's no such thing as a black nationalist movement. It's a black movement. There's no such thing as a white nationalist movement. It's a white movement. And so it's really only a handful of some in the populist movement who are voicing what I recognize as their anti-Semitism, even if they're clutching onto a semi-legitimate reason this time.
Now, I had the privilege of getting a sneak preview of your upcoming column that is yet to be published and is coming out soon. In it, you argued that revolutionary movements often fracture even after the common enemy is weakened. Are we watching that happen now within the upcoming post-Trump America First movement? And what's at stake if it continues?
Yeah, with the MAGA movement, look, anytime you have a revolution, there are disparate groups allying to defeat a common enemy. Whether that's, if you remember what they called the Green Revolution in the Middle East, where you had the Muslim Brotherhood, along with people who truly wanted a Jeffersonian democracy, allied, because first you defeat the enemy, and then once the enemy is defeated, then you decide how to govern. And so, once again, we are not this monolithic movement, whether you call us MAGA. Well, make America great again. Yes, we agree, but exactly what policies does one embrace, does one promote in order to make America great again? Well, there are going to be differences, and there are differences, and they're showing they're cropping up even now. Whether it was our support of Israel as they fought against Iran, or whether it was the president's decision to eliminate Iran's nuclear capabilities, or now whether it's this, you are seeing a difference between the various factions that are now going to fight it out, not just about the Middle East, but about domestic policy as well. Make America great again doesn't say anything about policy, and America First says almost nothing about policy, because what is in America's best interest might not be agreed upon by all of these different coalitions. So look, there's the expression revolutions devour their own. And this is exactly why. After we were allied with the Soviet Union in World War II, we then engaged in the Cold War. Well, we've been allied as a movement, but now that it looks like wokeism is in its death throes, and made even worse by the fact that this movement, MAGA and America First, has been led by a single person with no close second, and that Donald Trump's not quite yet a lame duck, but soon they will be vying for the power and the prestige and the money of the Republican Party. Soon they will be vying for everything that comes with the White House, and that's a great deal of power to be fought for. Sometimes not by all that good people, sometimes by people who don't love America but who lust for power.
Now, speaking of that term, there seems to be a growing instinct to define, quote, real MAGA or, quote, real America First by a single foreign policy stance, in this case, opposition to Israel. What do you make of that, and where do these purity tests ultimately lead?
Well, that's exactly what it is it's a purity test, and every one of these, if you go back to Robespierre, he had to turn on his closest ally. If you go back to Stalin, he turned on his closest ally. If you go back to Mao, he turned on his closest ally. And the reason being that if it's power that you lust for, then the enemy becomes the person closest to you ideologically, the person who is the most obvious replacement for you. If you want to be the voice of the movement, then you've got to eliminate the voice that's most like you, in the same way that if Coke wants to dominate the market, it has to eliminate Pepsi, not Starbucks.
So as the movement moves beyond Trump's presidency and into the fight over what you were mentioning, what comes next, who comes next, how do we preserve the good faith debate without letting it turn into narrative warfare that tears the coalition apart?
Well, yeah, you have to be aware of the fact that it's a good thing to have this battle within. It's legitimate and it's healthy. The question is, are these good people of goodwill arguing in good faith, or are they people of bad will arguing in bad faith in order to divide and conquer? And unfortunately, there are several. And by the way, it's not so much the politicians yet, because President Trump is not quite yet technically a lame duck. I hate to use that phrase to describe a man as strong and powerful and wonderful, as Donald Trump, and he will certainly remain a powerful voice within the movement once he's no longer constitutionally allowed to serve. But at this point, you have people who want to fill that gap and want to do so at any price. And you have to be alert to the fact, as you're listening to the righteous and rightful arguments about what is America first. Does that really mean isolation? Does that mean enmity and blocking ourselves off from our neighbors? Does that mean total disinterest in the ambitions of Iran and North Korea and Russia and China? What does America first mean? Well, this is something that needs to be rightfully and righteously discussed and debated and ironed out. But you have to keep your eye out for people who are not of goodwill, who are using what Steve Bannon calls unrestricted narrative warfare, unrestricted by decency, unrestricted by the facts, unrestricted by anything other than their desire to divide. And that's how you divide, is with a purity test. because when you make one issue a purity test, you get to eliminate all of your own failures and all of the other person's efforts on behalf of the revolution, of the movement to this point. And so you can have somebody like a Tucker Carlson who has spent his entire career blowing in the wind. I mean, this is a guy who, when PBS, when CNN, when MSNBC was looking for somebody they could say, hey, at least we have a conservative, every single one of them knew Tucker Carlson was the guy to get because he would serve their purposes. Suddenly he's the real voice of America first. You know, you have to look back at history. Who's really been on your side the whole time? And you have to make it's almost like a presidential primary where you've got 14 candidates and you have to listen to and choose the one who you really believe is A, capable, B, honest, and C, shares your values.
So this issue has this funny way of piercing through both opposing parties, both opposing movements. Bill Maher, you mentioned Tucker Carlson, the Tucker Carlson wing of the conservative movement, as some people, or Candace Owens, or whatever. And there's obviously pushback amongst conservatives like yourself against that wing. And then on the left, you have people like Bill Maher pushing against the AOC wing of the Democrat Party and the Democrat movement on the same issue. Now, you used to write for Bill Maher, I believe during his politically incorrect days. When I first saw you, one of the first times I saw you was on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood at the Laugh Factory, and you were performing.
A man has to make a living.
and you do this Q&A afterwards, after your comic act, and someone asked you what happened to Bill Maher. Now, at the time, Bill Maher, it was 2009, and Bill Maher was full-on Obama groupie, and they had asked you, has he drifted far left from his day? Nowadays, he's pushing against. He's appearing more moderate. And he's pushing against AOC. Now, is he kind of coming full circle to where he was before when you worked with him? Or has the Overton window of the Democrat Party and the left shifted so far left that he just appears moderate?
Well, I think it's the latter. I think at a certain point when the left has gone so far left, at a certain point, I mean, it was Dennis Prager who long ago said, just because a car hit your grandfather from the right doesn't mean you don't look left the next time you cross the street. And for so long, people on the political left have been looking to the right for the next Hitler, for the next fascist, for the next, that they haven't seen exactly what they fear creeping up behind them. Now, some turn around and look more quickly than others. I mean, I did it 15 years before Maher did, but nonetheless, any person of any kind of goodwill. Look, there are true liberals, lowercase L liberals, who are good and decent people who want the best for America and actually think through the issues. They just happen to be wrong on most of them. We conflate liberal, lowercase L, with left. And once you recognize that if you're a liberal, you can't be a leftist, and that's where Maher finally got. If you are a true lowercase L liberal, then you cannot be a leftist. And so Maher's remained the same as he's always been. I wish he didn't feel the need, and I don't totally get it, to gratuitously slap the right every time he slaps the left. I think in a sense that's a way to hold on to your bona fides and to show, hey, look, I'm even-handed, as opposed to I'm coming after you. But nonetheless, it's so much more important that it come from him than it come from me or you, because they expect it from me and you. They don't expect it from Maher. So I will take what he gives us.
You can read Evan's books, The Woke Supremacy, The Kindergarten of Eden, both of which I've read and thoroughly enjoyed. And you can subscribe to Evan's Substack at sayet.substack.com. Evan, thanks for being with us.
Oh, my pleasure, Christian. Thank you, Christian.
And coming up, Libby Emmons joins us for Headline Roulette.